Looks like we're making it onto the air. Welcome to College Talk Tuesday with your hosts, us.
Pearl Lockwood.
And me. It is I, Andy Lockwood. So we're going to be talking about a little dose of college reality today. This is going to be an abbreviated version, typical maybe 25-minute version of our weekly show, College Talk Tuesday, which comes out for parents of college-bound teens every week to talk about strategies on how to get into college, how to get more money for college in terms of scholarships and financial aid. Pearl is the financial aid forms prep maven in our practice, and I'm more of a college coach. Our approach is a little different. That's what we're going to be talking about today because for us, college is, it's 4 years. Should be 4 years.
Ideally.
The bigger picture, I was talking about this again with someone this morning, is that I think most guidance counselors and most families and kids and parents included get it all wrong. They focus on the 4 years of college instead of the what's next, the 40-plus years.
Not even the 4 years, just the first year, getting in.
Well, okay,
and not thinking past your nose.
Yeah, so today we're going to drill in on exactly that, because what you were just describing to me in our planning meeting that ran for a few hours this morning, or more accurately, about 17 seconds right before we got on the air when I said, hey, what do you want to talk about? Is that you've been preparing a lot of reports in terms of your financial aid forms just to kind of handicap kids' chances of getting money as well as getting in, and you're starting to look over kids' college lists, and what are you finding? And before, I'll just let you think about that.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, pop a comment in right below us. Please like and share. Let us know that you can hear us okay, introduce yourselves, and also check out our website, which I'll post here. We have a bunch of workshops coming up this month and next month too. Okay, what have you been finding when you are looking at kids' college lists?
Okay, well, of course I do the financial aid forms, but financial aid forms are used both for to access need-based and merit-based aid. The same forms are used. How and when financial aid forms are filed, that triggers the school you're filing them to prepare an award letter for the student. How that award ultimately gets cobbled up together can be made up of loans, merit aid, need-based aid, work study, a whole, what? How am I getting into this from this?
Yeah.
Well, because so too, what we do in addition to seeing where your need-based or how you can better your eligibility, the other thing we concentrate on is the students' grades and scores and basically how they're going to look in an admissions officer's eyes, and the school that they're applying to, and what is their likelihood, what is their chances of realistically, that's going to be the word of the day, reality, of getting into that school. No snarky remarks or faces. So what I have been finding lately is perhaps a little Naviance heavy focus, perhaps, or I've always wanted to go to this school, so I'm just going to reach for the stars, however unrealistic they are. The reality is, while a lot falls out of the grades and scores, you need to hedge your bets. And if all of your schools have your ACT at that lowest end of their range at a particular school, and you are not also perhaps a recruited athlete, a legacy, a cured cancer last year, what have you, then I don't know that enough that ACT being on the lowest end and your GPA on the lowest end, I don't know about your likelihood of getting into that particular institution. So unfortunately, what I have seen a lot lately is a lack of connection to reality in school choices. You need to round out your list with both, not to say that you shouldn't go for the target school, for the reach schools and the schools that you love and you're hoping to get in and single yourself out and make yourself stand out to that school. Absolutely. Go for it. However, what you don't want to happen, unfortunately, I have seen this. We perform all kinds of services for families who hire us. For example, sometimes we only are brought into the picture at the time all the student and the family has already picked all their schools, and they're just giving us let's say their financial information to prepare financial aid forms. I have no idea what grade scores or whatnot and how qualified a particular student is in that scenario. And then what I've seen in these cases is come April, I have a terrified, panic-stricken family who's saying, add this, add this, add this, add this college, add this college, add this college, she got in nowhere. That's a terrible place to be in April. You don't want to be there. And there are ways to avoid it. It's a matter, and it really is a matter of how soon you want to connect with reality and how soon you want to market that reality to your child.
Was that all one breath?
Interestingly, I actually have so much more to say. But
yeah, no. So we call that admissions Armageddon. You want to avoid being in a situation where, I mean, there's a few things to talk about. So one of them is, no, it doesn't feel good to be told to go F yourself over and over again. No. Applying to all these schools just for the heck of it. The next thing is, where do you really belong? So there's a bigger picture here in terms of majors and careers and all that, but there's also the picture, and I talked to someone today whose daughter is coming home from a brief stint in college, and we see that, with a lot of clients where kids, they get to the college, the brass ring, and then they decide it's really not everything they had hoped it was going to be in their sort of romanticized version of their reality. But also, what if you manage to scratch and claw your way into a really super hard college, and then you start getting B minuses and C pluses and all that, because that's not really the right fit for you academically.
And if you were to even look back on that, you would probably acknowledge that that was a path of resistance to even get there, which you should question.
Yeah, and again, it's a fine line between bursting someone's bubble and saying, no, don't apply to Harvard. But if you have 12 to 15, God help me if you have 15, but if you have 12 colleges on your list, 8 of them should not be each Ivy League school. You need to be, you need to try your best to fall in love with your target schools and maybe even your safety schools.
Right, especially if just on a tangent, but it's really very important and needs to be considered in this discussion at the outset, is what is the likelihood of this student, any student, going to graduate school? And you have to consider that's going to be the last school that the world sees in terms of, where you're going to land yourself a job.
You.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if
matters
you
where
are
you
clawing,
finish, not
that's
where
right.
you start.
If you're clawing your way into a competitive school and you get there and you have serious difficulty staying there and keeping up, you have really hurt your chances when you are going to be a graduate school applicant. And is it worth it? Because is that your goal? Your goal certainly stretches past that 4-year stint in college.
So Pearl made a comment before about referring to Naviance's shortcomings. So we did a workshop last night in Seacliff, right near where we live. It was actually in the courtroom. That was the first.
No gavel.
Yeah, no robes or gavels, but as soon as Pearl started talking, I screamed, "Objection! Asked and answered!" And then I kept telling people to approach the bench. No one thought it was
funny. There were a few polite chuckles. Yeah.
Not from her or our daughter Lizzie, who's in 9th grade. I, of course, thought it was hysterically funny. Anyway, we kept, hearing questions, having to do with getting to these hard schools and all that. Talked about Naviance a little bit last night also. So most people know what it is, but not everyone knows what Naviance is. High schools, for the most part, almost every high school, at least that we encounter, uses Naviance to help handicap kids' chances of getting in. But one of the flaws is that it only looks at grades and scores.
But it doesn't really do that.
No, it does to a certain extent, but the admissions decision factors in 20 or 25 different elements, whereas Naviance looks at like 2, your GPA and either your ACT or your SAT score. Then it compares you only against your high school.
To me, that's the craziest part. That is such limited. It is such an odd population. Just the people from your high school. Right. That is not any representative.
Well, and that's a big reason why people think that there's quotas at high schools, which there aren't. That's a different topic. Anyway, we don't use Naviance in our practice for those reasons.
It's inaccurate.
But what happens though is that if you look at the grades and the scores and you think you have a decent shot of getting in, you really need to understand that if you're in the low end, like Pearl said, or the middle end, that's not the best shot of getting in when you're competing with kids all over the world who are these special categories that get a bump because they're special categories.
And that's why those kids with those scores got into those schools.
The lower grades and scores.
Exactly.
Right.
That's
and this is
why
not,
you can't
not politically
attach
correct.
yourself to those.
Not politically correct, but that means underrepresented minorities, it means international students, it means recruited athletes, it means legacies who almost always have lower grades and scores as their predecessor or as compared to the general population. You know, there's a lot of factors that go in, and that's why if you rely heavily on Naviance or something similar to that, you won't get in. I want to give another tip before we get off the air here. I just want to see if anyone has any questions. I see a few people joining us. So just introduce yourselves in the comment section. Say hi, let us know you can hear us loud and clear. I'm posting right now a link to a site that I've been using a lot recently called collegedata.com, which I think everyone should pay attention to in a couple of areas. So the area I'm going to talk about is I was talking to a client of ours, Jenny, whose daughter is scheduling, she's a senior, she's scheduling a visit at her top choice school. She wasn't sure if she should just sit in on a class or go overnight. I said, please do both. And Jenny's comment was, I don't know if she's really ready to do that. I'm like, you know, you got to push them out of the nest at some point, right? So the bigger question, though, and this is something that I looked up on college data, was how important is it to demonstrate that you're interested? And that varies from school to school. So if you don't get into a certain school that's in your range, your grades and scores range, frequently, if it's like Tulane is one of these schools, I heard Tufts is another one of these schools, they won't admit someone that has not shown enough interest or that they think is not really likely to attend there in many cases because they care about something called the yield, which is the ratio of admitted kids versus matriculated kids, how many actually show up. So if the yield is too low, then that indirectly hurts a college's rank and all sorts of other unpleasant things to the college administration.
Which they care about and you need to be aware of.
Right, and it's different than your agenda. That's another thing that's an eye-opener that we heard last night at our workshop, is that, you know, there's the kid agenda and then there's the real stuff that's going on, you know, in the business of college. So so then there was another college that I was also talking about with Jenny, and I showed her, listen, college A does not care so much. They don't consider demonstrated interest at all. And college B, that was visiting the school today, rates that as highly important. And the issue that she was having was her daughter, you know, wasn't interested in going to say hi to the rep, and you know, there's all this other, you know, parent-daughter tension. But you need to understand that if a school factors in how interested you are and you don't show interest, that's not going to help you get in. It's going to hurt your chances of getting in. So college data, you can mess around with that. It's got a lot of good stuff. I posted that here. Also, I mentioned this at the beginning of our little broadcast here. Oh, look. Hello, Fran. Very exuberant,
Hi,
all caps.
Fran.
I think that's not shouting. I think it's just enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
Yeah, okay. We're doing these workshops. I posted that. Also, we've got one coming up in 2 days in Manhasset. Then we go out to Hop Hog, and everything's posted on the College Planning Guru down there. And you're all welcome. All welcome to come. If you're local, and even if you're not local, fly in. It's worth it. Yeah. So I hope that college data helps. All right. Anything else that came up last night? Any reactions before we? I know you've got a phone call you've got to make to a client.
I do. You know, just keep an open mind. Cast your nets wide. Get in touch with reality sooner rather than later. That's really a theme. It's not even a joke. I mean, really, there is a way to manage your disappointment, potential disappointment in this year. You can have a lot more control over what seems like a very out of control process.
Fran, so I can't figure out yet how to share my screen on these Facebook broadcasts, but if you were to go to collegedata.com and click on admissions, you'll see a chart. I'll forward one to you. Just make a note to myself right now. but there's a chart that kind of that goes down all of the characteristics that a college considers. So that could be GPA, it could be rigor of class. I mean, these are the there's X's on each of these categories: GPA, rigor, standardized test scores, demonstrated interest, geographic diversity, so on and so forth. So you can mess around with that website, and you'll probably like what you see, I think, in terms of Walter. But to me it's a fascinating website because these colleges are self-reporting what they consider and how they consider. They respond to a poll done every year. I can't remember which body does that poll, but it's very illuminating.
Yeah, I think the other thing that also touches on the other takeaway is that there is no uniformity between the schools necessarily. Each school does their thing differently, whether it's giving credit for visiting or connecting with the school, or how they prepare your financial aid award. Distinct, different from other schools. Each school's different, and you got to know that and know the school you're applying to and how they want things. So best resource for that is the school's own website.
We got a couple of questions like that last night at the workshop also, in terms of what is the one thing, like what is the most important extracurricular activity to do? That was a question. Or what's the deadline to file forms?
Right.
So there is no deadline to file forms that is uniform and universal across the board. Every college has its own application deadlines, as well as financial aid priority deadlines.
They may coincide, but not necessarily. And
they're not October 1st either, which is when
right.
the FAFSA comes out in a few days, and the CSS profile comes out in a few days. We've heard that there's not a lot of changes on the FAFSA this year, but we're anticipating some changes on the CSS profile.
Correct.
Eagerly anticipating those. Pearl can't sleep in that.
Busting.
Yeah. Exciting stuff. Yeah. So so you have to check each and every deadline so you don't blow it on these forms, or the application deadline, and make sure. Yeah, you also have to be ever vigilant to make sure that your guidance counselor is doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of transcripts and recommendations and this and that, and also make sure every school that you are applying to and you want financial aid from, make sure they also receive and acknowledge receipt of your FAFSA and any other form that they require, like this CSS profile. Yeah, what?
In case we right, and in case we've been a little too Eeyore in this presentation.
Meaning donkey-like?
No, Eeyore,
Negative?
Yeah. Just know, because we do this year after year after year, a year from now, if you have a student that's graduating in 2018, a year from now, your student will be at a school, hopefully happily settled in. This will be a thing of the past, and you will have lived through this year. And it happens year after year after year. So try to keep your perspective as you go through it.
Easier said than done, but very wise words. Yes. All right. So on that note, because we've actually got some work to do, we're going to wrap up this episode of College Talk Tuesday. And if you want to get in touch with us, just pop a comment in. We're happy to, we will read each and every comment and reply to them, usually same day. Just, thanks for being part of our community here. Thanks for sharing us with anyone you think needs this information, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.